What's going on, everyone? Ains here, Season Gaming, and today we're going to be talking about how to build your Druid in Diablo 4. Now, I have spent countless hours in the review early access period with Diablo 4. I mained a Druid in that time, and so I'm going to be speaking to what I've learned, how to build a Druid that can take on late game content, the capstone dungeon, nightmare difficulty, and more, either solo or in groups. And I'm going to be talking about and explaining the differences between Diablo 4's building system versus Diablo 3's, along with the key things you need to know relating to loot, affixes, the spirit boon specialty, and more. So, a couple things before we get into the menus and I show you specific skills. So this is what worked for me. I have talked to others in the review period who were using Druid. We've compared a lot of notes. There are other builds, obviously, that'll be viable in that vein. This is what worked for me. I like to build characters, especially in this Druid form or Barb form, Crusader form in D3, that can take a ton of damage, can stand in the middle of a big group and smash them all to pieces without dying. I love that. It's how I like to build. That's what I'm going to show you here today. To be very clear, this is my build specifically at the moment. I believe I'm level 55 or something of that nature. I don't have it in front of me. This is the build that I have used to beat the game. The capstone dungeon after the game, it's a level 50 dungeon. I beat it at level 47 solo. I then switched to Nightmare, which is world tier 3. And I've been able to conquer any of the content across Nightmare across the world, including the monstrosities in the Fields of Hatred, the Helltide events, the 55 plus level bosses, the level 60 plus areas, basically anything to do with that. So it has worked extremely well for me. In fact, I can't even remember the last time I actually died in a combat, just because this build with the affixes, which I'll show you, not only takes the damage, but regenerates enough health and kind of keeps you killing everything quickly so that you can manage it all. So first things first. Builds in Diablo 4 have more variety than Diablo 3. They've talked about that since early on in development, and it's something where multiple builds will work. They're less focused on loot. However, what I have found is once you get to the late game or get kind of past game end, and especially once you get to nightmare difficulty, the affixes and the things that you take off of legendaries and your codex of power from the dungeons become incredibly important. They will be the difference between succeeding with a build and not succeeding with a build. So I will point those out to you as well, and the ones that I have found work extremely well for druids. Let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so we're going to start right at the top of the tree. Now, the build that I primarily work towards has to do with everything storm related and everything werebear related, along with all of the passives that are going to keep you alive. So your primary is going to be Storm Strike. As you can see, it's a storm skill, and really the key here, which you're going to hear me say many times, is around keeping enemies weak, vulnerable, and stunned. So as you can see here, this is going to make enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds, 50% chance, and that'll obviously kind of capitalize as we go down the build more. So you have this secondary skill here, which makes a chance to immobilize all enemies. And then you have an additional skill supplement that'll make enemies vulnerable, like I said. That's going to be your primary attack, or your basic attack. And it's very important to remember here where it says basic in green, because that's how it's going to tie to affixes and let you know how affixes impact your damage. So once you come down the tree, the main skill that you're going to use to basically smash everything is Pulverize. Pulverize is your core skill, as you can see in green. And basically, I have this leveled all the way up. At this moment, I actually don't have a supplement that was making it 7 or 8 out of 5. But, you will see those later on. Now, the key here is that you're going to overpower enemies as long as you are healthy. So healthy means that you have more than 80% of your life. And then when you overpower, you do additional damage based on your current life and your fortified life combined. So again, the entire build is about staying high health and smashing everything around you. You're going to supplement that here where overpower every 12 seconds while you remain healthy, like I just said. And enemies overpowered or stunned. So again, you're talking stunned, immobilized, and vulnerable every step of the way here. Now your passive is key. You're going to use this a lot. Not your passive, your defensive skill, excuse me. And that is debilitating roar. So this is the thing where you're going to scream out, it's going to turn you into a bear, and it's going to supplement all of your health. Basically makes you take less damage, you can heal for your health, and it's going to fortify you as well. Remember what I said a second ago, is you're already starting to see the combination of you're going to overpower and do additional damage based on how much health you have and fortified with, assuming you're healthy. So staying healthy is key. So this additional skill supplement here, preserving debilitating roar, will heal you. This one fortifies you. So this one's key. Now, I'll come back to the passives here shortly. Let's do main skills and then we'll come back up to the passives. On this build, you're not going to be using any companions. It's just not something I build into with this one. It's not something that I felt really was worth putting points into because of the type of output that we're focused on here. So nothing in companions. These little blue 2s out of 5s you see here are just based on some items I currently have. It's not that I put points into them. Now this one's pretty important. I think you could probably play around with this to optimize greatly or more, I think, but I think it's definitely a good supplement as well. So I use Hurricane, which basically, again, you're going into a space where you're going to put yourselves in the middle of a lot of enemies. So Hurricane is a great tick damage skill where you're going to just continue to do tick damage while you're doing everything else around you. And it's supplemented by slowing enemies and, again, making them vulnerable. I said you're going to hear that word many, many times. So everything to supplement basically screwing with the enemies around you. Now, I put a lot of skill points into this because, again, this is where your capitalization on storm magic is going to come in. So, and you'll see why in a second here once we get to our ultimate skill. But basically everything to do with storm skills here. So you've got additional vulnerable going towards them. You have increasing the duration of both Hurricane and Cataclysm, which is going to be the ultimate I'll speak to. You have up to a 30% chance of dealing damage to vulnerable, immobilized, or stunned enemy that a lightning bolt will also hit them, doing big damage. And dealing lightning damage to enemies has a 15% chance to immobilize them for 3 seconds. So again, you're seeing these combination skills, and this is a big theme in Diablo 4, is combination skills that build on one another. So this one is going to do additional big-time damage or every now and then to vulnerable, immobilized, or stunned enemies. You've already seen all the other skills that we've put into making enemies vulnerable or immobilized or stunned. And then this is just a combination one that can also immobilize them. So they work in conjunction with one another. Now, your ultimate skill, you're going to use Cataclysm. And I can tell you when you capitalize with all of the different storm magic and you build into the affixes, which I'm going to show you, Cataclysm is absolutely incredible with how it will melt large-scale enemies. So this one basically follows you around. It does tornadoes and electric damage. And then, again, you make it last as long as possible. That's what this one does, and that's what this one does, Endless Tempest. So it keeps it going longer. And then, of course, guess what? It's also going to make enemies vulnerable. So if I didn't mention it earlier, what vulnerable actually is, and you can see it at the bottom of the box there, is it makes enemies take 20% increased damage. So again, it's just compounding everything together. And then lastly, here at the bottom, you get your key passive. You can only have one of these at least without affixes, and you're going to use your Earth Sign Strength. So going back to the other side of the build, which is your health, this gives you additional maximum life while in werebear form and 3 seconds after leaving werebear form. Now think about this for a second. What this means, right, is you're using Pulverize. Like I said, you're going to be slamming the ground constantly. So you're going to smack with your basic, and then you're going to be slamming your core skill constantly to Pulverize where you're turning into a bear. So that means every time you use Pulverize and turn into a bear back and forth, you're going to be getting 20% of your life and keeping it. And it just keeps going and going and going. And you're rebuilding your health basically as you're attacking constantly. It's kind of like a skill build version of life on hit, right? So it just works very, very well together. And I have played around a lot with different things. I use different ultimates. I use different passives. I've messed around with the werewolf, which I just personally didn't like as much. I have played around in this space and really found this works well. Now, the passives as you go down the tree here are really about crit damage and survivability. So I use these, which are increasing your crit chance, and you'll see that a lot in the items we use. And 9% damage reduction in werebear form. Again, you're constantly in werebear form, so you're getting like a permanent damage reduction there. You get your non-physical resistances, which obviously in any Diablo game, are very key late game because you're going to be standing in poison or lasers or ice or all these other things that hit you. You also get a damage reduction every time you use your defensive skill. So that's every time you use Debilitating Roar, you're going to automatically use Vigilance, which is a 15% damage reduction. Continuing down, is that the only passives I think right now? No, here they are, sorry. Quick Shift, so this is another one. When a shape-shifting skill transforms you into a different form, it deals 15% increased damage. Again, I feel like a broken record, but you're slamming as werebear constantly. So you're going werebear, human, werebear, human, werebear, human constantly. This is going to give you increased damage every time you do that. And then, counter to that, every time you shapeshift, you're going to get damage reduction against elites. Now, this heightened senses is probably one of the last ones you can do because it's specific to elites, and elites really don't become any sort of problem until later in the game. Your early on elites, the kind of champion enemies that you fight, they're really not that dangerous in my opinion. But once you get to Nightmare and you start fighting like the level 55 bosses that have like 4 or 5 different effects on them, this will come in very handy. So that's your core skill build. Like I said, it's all about Pulverize, Storm Magic, and Survivability. And those are the skills you're going to want to use. Now, I'll get to the affixes in a minute, but let's talk Spirit Boons. So you'll get your quest once you get to level 15, where you can eventually go beat this stronghold and you can start to use Spirit Boons. Now, for me personally, I'll show you what I use, but there's quite a few different ways you can build this. So you get one of each type of boon from the animals, and then on one of the animals you can get 2. I chose to get 2 here. I don't know why the animals don't line up here, because I thought it was the snake that I did the 2 boons for, yet here it shows something else. But regardless, it has things like thorns, it has spirit, it has control effects, attack speed, all these different things you can use. Here's the ones I found most effective with my build. So on the first one, you take 10% reduction of damage from elites, wariness, which goes back to what I just said a minute ago. Once you get to the level that you're at now, you're going to face a lot of elites. They're going to be the things that have any sort of chance of really threatening you, including bosses, of course. Taking 10% as a flat reduction of damage from them is very effective. On the 2 here, all about crit hits. So you're increasing your crit chance by 5%, which is massive, and your 30% critical strike damage. So combination with your skills, this 5% every time you crit hit, which is going to be often, and includes overpowering. You can do overpower critical hits. Those are going to be your big bangs. Those are the ones that are going to kill like 20 enemies at once. That comes in huge. Now, some would argue that you can do the 10% attack speed, and I would agree. Attack speed is obviously a very big damage, increases your output greatly. However, because what you're doing with this build is really about pulverize and slamming as the bear, your core attacks are secondary. And so it just, in my opinion, I found it works better if you just go for the crit damage, because that's where you're going to do the big damage with pulverize. On this line, I've used Calamity, primarily because, like I said, Cataclysm does ridiculous amounts of damage if you build your storm skills properly, and increasing its damage output by 25% time-wise is huge. It'll just keep it going, and then your time between the times you can use Cataclysm, right, with your cooldown reduction, becomes even better, and you can just quickly throw it out constantly and just wipe out either groups of enemies or major enemies. And then on the last one, I switched it to Overload. I think I was using this originally. I was using Masochistic, which critical strikes heal you. But what I found is I'm healing through so many other methods now that it made more sense to switch it to Overload, which is basically causes your storm magic to transmit to other enemies. So when you're taking out large groups, especially powerful large groups in like World Tier 3, this can come in very handy. So Spirit Boons are good. I don't think this is, that's, like I said, those are the ones that I use, but definitely play around with it and see what you like. Now, as you can see on the screen here, my character, I've gotten to the point where I'm getting sacred legendaries, and even here I got a beautiful sacred unique, which is a fantastic drop. You can kind of see the item powers, extremely high for this level. So what you may find is, to give you an idea of how different these builds can be, I was speaking to someone else who was a level 52 druid. Their attack power was 2100. That was in the review Discord. So as you can see above, my attack power is 4314, which, as I said, destroys pretty much anything that I come in contact with. So couple key things here. Now, this is a sacred legendary staff I found twice. It is incredible. This one happens to be the rapid version of it, which, as you can see, gives basic skills and attack speed gain. So this just helps me build spirit really quickly. I don't think this is critical to the build, but what is critical, as you will see across the legendaries, are these things where you see core skill damage and damage to close enemies and vulnerable damage. So all of those things we talked about, being in the middle of enemies, slamming everyone with pulverize, making sure they're vulnerable, all of these items you want to make sure have something that complements that build, because the damage just grows and grows and grows and grows, and that's how you're going to smash everything. This one is pretty cool as well. A great affix, if you can get it, is while Hurricane is active, gain +2 ranks to your shapeshifting skills, right? So when I use Hurricane, and as I said, I have the extended duration of Hurricane on, and it's doing that tick damage, right? I'm going to get a +2 rank to Pulverize, which is then obviously going to increase my Pulverize damage, and again, it builds on one another. Fantastic one to have. This one's pretty good. So your basic skills grant 20% damage reduction for 4 seconds. So, I mean, it says 2 to 6 is the range. But what's really neat about this, right, is it means that every time you smack someone with your basic skill to build your spirit so that you can pulverize, you're getting a 20% damage reduction. And it lasts for 4 seconds. And what you'll find is when you're in the middle, or it lasts for 2 to 6 seconds, excuse me. But what you'll find is as you're in the middle of groups, right, you're using your basic skill every second or two. It moves that quickly. So you're getting a constant damage reduction here, which is huge. That one's nothing special. This one's pretty good. What you'll find is when you get injured, so injured means that you have less than 35% of your life. Oftentimes, once you get late game, that's going to happen. You're going to be crowd controlled. So you're going to be frozen, or you're going to be shocked or stunned, or you're going to be walled in, or, any number of things, right? So what this does, it allows you, if you get to that low health point, it allows you to become unstoppable for a few seconds. And that lets you just escape, basically, and run away and dash. So that's pretty important. I like that one. I use it quite a bit. Now, this is where Diablo 4 really kind of comes into its own, in my opinion, is it starts to combine skills via affixes. And so here, as you can see, it says your earth skills are also now werebearer skills and fortify you. Now, with the build I've showed you, we're not using earth skills directly, and I'll explain that in a second. But what it means is if you were to cast an earth skill, it also counts, meaning you get a bonus for any werebearer skills. So if you have any abilities, right, that capitalize, and I'll show you, like for instance, pulverize, right, up there in the left says it's a werebearer skill. So basically anything that you are using that supplements a werebearer skill, when you use an earth skill, it'll now count as that as well. These are really, really neat, and they can come in very handy, which I'll show you more in 1 second. If I can find the one that I was talking about. I may not actually have it equipped right now. Let's see. I'm looking. Do I have it in my aspects? There it is. That's the one I'm looking for. Sorry for the delay. So this one is really interesting. I don't actually have it on my build right now, but it's definitely really cool. So it makes Pulverize is now also an earth skill, just like I said, vice versa. So when you cast Pulverize, tectonic spikes continue to deal extra damage over 2 seconds. So it basically will turn your single skills that are focused on one type of skill into a double skill. And then all of your item stats that say capitalize or kind of improve anything to do with werebearer skills or earth skills will add a bonus to that attack. So you get double bonus. And capitalizing on those with your build, it can be very, very big. I was using this for a while. I just haven't switched it over. I'm at the point now where I'm kind of done optimizing because we're at the end of the review period and everything's getting wiped. I don't get to keep any of this. So, you know, I've kind of slowed down on making it perfect. But you get the idea. Now, this is the other one that if you are a druid is critically important in my opinion. And you can get this from the dungeon near the town. Oh gosh, I forget the town name, but it's in the upper left. You can't miss it. You have to do a quest by the tree for the town, and you will see it in the dungeon right there. So as you can see, it says attacking enemies with a basic skill increases the damage of your next core skill cast by 5% up to 30%. So again, I'll just remind you if you're a little confused on what this means. Your Storm, your basic attack, is in green there. It's a basic attack. Pulverize, which we've built around, is your core attack, right? So what this affix does is it basically says that every time you hit someone with your basic skill, the next time you do your core attack, which you're going to be doing endlessly, is it's going to get a damage output boost by 5 up to 30%. So this alone just completely can transform your druid build. Especially in this arena here. And then this is kind of an interesting one too. You deal a certain amount of percentage increased damage for every second you stand still, up to 30 times. And in fact, if you look right here at this little bonus, it's at 30 right now. See, damage increase while standing still. And then at 12 stacks, your next pulverize will overpower, like I said. So these little indicators here are functions of your affixes and build as well. So you need to be aware of those. But this is neat because if you are in the middle of a huge group of enemies, they're going to keep coming at you. You don't need to be moving really in this build. You can just kind of turn, smack things, aim at them, and then pulverize. And as long as you're not moving, you're getting a big damage output. So all of these things combine to just make a build which is, you know, just has been fantastic for me. So I will show you a short little gameplay clip now to kind of demonstrate what I'm talking about. This is going to be co-op 3-player during a Helltide fighting multiple elites and obviously standing in a huge mix of enemies. As you can see, as I'm in the middle of them, you just keep seeing critical hits pop up and you keep seeing the word vulnerable pop up. And like I said, that's what the build's all about. So this gives you an idea, you know, this build that you're looking at and that I just showed you through can stand in the middle of this group of elites and gigantic enemies during Helltide in 3-player co-op. And yeah, I'm losing health here and there, but you can see how fast it's going up and refilling. And so it's just a fantastic way to play. It's a lot of fun, and it allows you to just have, you know, use a druid that feels like a monster, right? It feels like you're this giant beast that can just smash everything in your path. And I've had an incredible amount of fun with it during the review period. It's a shame it's getting wiped, although I can't complain about getting access to the game early. But it is definitely something that I'm going to build towards in the future again once, you know, we all play this game for the years to come. So I think I have covered everything that I wanted to cover in the build and explanations of the skills. There's an awful lot more that I'm going to be covering about Diablo 4, including during live streams, which you can find me on Twitch. I'm going to have another video that explains the massive amount of different kind of status effects and everything that goes into some of these skills, not just for Druid, but for all the classes. So there's just a lot of things to learn in Diablo 4, and I want to make sure, you know, I've spent a lot of time with this game between closed access, beta access, and now the review access. I easily have probably 120, 150 hours plus already before launch into the game, and I'm happy to answer any questions around the game or build, or, you know, just questions in general about endgame or anything like that. I didn't even get to the Paragon board, of course, which, you know, I'm not super far in, but I began building. It's very interesting. It's not really worth talking about because it's not specific to this build at the moment anyway. But, you know, it's just going to be a lot of fun to play with everyone and to build this out. So anyway, thank you as always for tuning in. I hope you like this. This is something new for the channel, new for me. I just felt that, you know, with all this kind of time I've put in and experience I have in building this already, it'd be fun to share. Please let me know if you liked it, if it helped you. If I said something incorrect, you can let me know that too. Otherwise, like I said, I'll be talking and playing a lot of Diablo. If I can help you, if I can answer questions, do anything like that, just reach out to me. You can find me on Twitter, you can find me on Twitch, you can find me on this channel. So, until then, until next time, have fun with Diablo 4. It's an amazing game. I hope you check out my full review of the game as well on the channel. And I hope to talk to you soon about it. Peace.